Alright everyone, welcome to Hot Button TV with Chinyere Favor, reaching you live from the streets of Lagos. We want to look at the Nigerian economy with particular reference to the recent report released on Sub-Saharan Africa by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, saying that Nigeria's economic reforms are not yielding the best of results yet, in spite of its implementation for about 18 months now. Now, joining me to look at the subject matter is Dr. Boniface Chizia, who is an economist and financial analyst.
Okay, well, we may have to address the fact that the IMF has made observation that 18 months after the reforms have been implemented, that the results we have are not encouraging. Whether we are supposed to agree with this submission or not. But the point is that what are the expectations, so what are these reforms? Now, when you look at the reforms which we've had to remove subsidy, we have to float exchange rate, and we all know what the consequences would be, and that was why it was not being implemented. So once you did that, so you're bound to have, to stoke up inflationary pressure. So that's exactly what's happened. And once you have inflation in an environment, and then so what then do you expect? You have inflation that the costs go through the roof, and then productivity would drop, employment rates would drop, and so there's crisis in the land. And so you don't expect also that within 18 months that these reforms could have taken root to the extent that we begin to see positive consequences. So that's exactly what it is. So what IMF observation is not surprising. So maybe they had different expectations than the rest of us. So we are not expecting anything. It's just that the reforms itself are not being holistically implemented. So that's the challenge. They're not being implemented altruistically. They're not being implemented selflessly. They are being implemented, and people are looking for what they'll get from those implementations. So that's the crisis. So we hope that we look forward. So what IMF have said there is not surprising. So there isn't really much to say. Now the next point is that IMF says Nigeria is among resource-intensive countries struggling with social and political challenges that hinder reform implementation. Resource-intensive wouldn't pose any challenges. In fact, the fact that you have, for instance, a large population, it translates into a large market. So which means that if you're a producer in Nigeria, you're not looking for market elsewhere. There are people who produce in some countries, and they don't have buyers, they don't have markets, there's no purchasing capacity, but we don't have that challenge here. So, but the thing is that, the thing to make here is that there's something they call the Dutch disease. So a resource-intensive country, those who have endowment in some resource area, they tend to over-concentrate in trying to exploit that only aspect to the neglect of other areas of the economy. So you have that challenge. So the thing to do is to intentionally and deliberately make sure that you reduce the contestation, reduce the focus on that in that area. You look, for instance, in Nigeria, we overly focus on oil production. So we produce oil from the Niger Delta, and then then we spend the proceeds elsewhere. So you have challenges, and those from whose area this oil is being produced, they suffer neglect. The environment suffers despoilation, and so that's the challenge. So being resource intensive should be.
Much, Dr. Boniface Chizia, economist and financial analyst. Always a pleasure having your views on topical economic issues in Nigeria. Do follow Hot Button TV for every topical issue, and of course stories that get you and I thinking. Thank you so much for watching. I am Chinyere Favor, and see you in my next one.